Hey guys, in this session, this is day 6 of our Excel challenge for data analysis. And today I want to talk about pivot table and charts. Uh, so I want you to unlock your full power of Excel by learning how to use pivot table and pivot charts for fast, flexible, and powerful data analysis. And in this practical session, I'm going to show you how to create pivot table from the raw data. I'm going to show you how to summarize and filter with ease. I'm going to create dynamic pivot table, and I'm going to analyze sets, the KPIs and trends without formulas. Then I'm going to teach you how to format your tables for clean interactive reporting. So this session is ideal for business analysts, it's also ideal for students, and also it's good for anyone who wants to turn raw data into real insights fast. So we're going to use the state data analysis. Okay. So welcome back, and feel free to be here and watch this video. So let's start by selecting our data and understanding a pivot table. The tool allows you to summarize large amounts of data in just a few clicks. So when you come under the insert tab, this is where you find when you come under the insert tab, this is where you find a pivot table, and this is where you insert it from. Okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is to create a pivot table. So we are using the raw sheet of our sales start data analysis Excel file. So I'll just click on pivot table, then it's going to ask for the table or range. So if this is your data, you can just click anywhere in your data and then press Ctrl plus A, and your table is going to be highlighted. You can see it has been highlighted. Then the sheet location is where you want your pivot table to appear. In this case, I'll say let me create it in a new worksheet and say okay. Then my pivot table is going to be created here. So this one, I can rename it to what? I can rename it to pivot table. So once the pivot table has been created, I want you to notice that we have some two tabs that have been added. We have the pivot table analyze, and we have the design tab that has been added as well. So here, depending on how many pivot table you created, the one by default is called the pivot table one. So you can rename it by clicking on here. That just click or highlight everything, and then we can call it our sample pivot table, so PT. You can change later once we decide what we want to feed our information. Now, apart from that, the most important part to learn about is the pivot table fields. When you come to the pivot table fields, this one is going to show every kind of column that is in your data set. Okay, it's going to show everything starting from order ID, date, product up to manager 2. If you come to the pivot table, you're going to get it from here. Okay. Then the pivot table has key things that you have also to master. And the first thing is called the filter. We have the columns, we have the rows, and we have the values. So the filter, we are going to see how to use them. The values will always take numerical values from your data set. Then columns and row depends with oneself. How do you want your output to appear? So how do we easily analyze data? By default, if you had to analyze this data manually, then you want to get the price for or the revenue for. We have revenue. Let me see. Okay, we have revenue. You want to get the revenue for fries. Then it means you're going to use the if. You're going to use what? Sum if, because you are trying to get the sum for fries only. You're going to use the sum if, then you'll get the sum if for fries. But now the pivot table is going to give us a shortcut. Let's say we want to get the price for each product. Okay, how are you going to do that? You go back to your pivot table. Sorry for that. You go back to your pivot table. Then you want to analyze price by product. So price being the numerical values here is going to go to values. And you can see the information is already feeding itself. Then now we can drag and drop product to rows. So you can see it has already given us the total for fries, the total for sides and others, the total for beverages, the total for burgers, and the total for chicken and sandwiches. Okay. So let's say if you want to remove this one from here, you can just carry and drop it outside. But if you want to return, you can always just come here. That was the product. When you tick, it's going to be back. But what if you decide to put product in the column? That's why I said when it comes to row and column, it depends with oneself. How do you want your data to appear? How do you want your summary to appear in the pivot table? But for me, I usually prefer using the rows. It makes my work so easier. Then these are total for prices. We can get a filter for, let's say, for manager, so that we get to understand. So this filter, you can see it has been added here. When you click here, you can see they're all. You have Joao Silva, Pablo Perez, Jaime Monet, Tom Jackson, and Walter Mueller. Those are our sales persons. We want to know what amount that each person contributed to the sum of price. So for example, we can start with one by one. Joao Silva. So you can see the values are changing. You can see those are sales for your silver. If you try to change to another person like Walter Mueller and say, okay, the same thing is going to happen. You can see it's giving you only the result for Walter Mueller. But if you want to clear the filter, you come back and click on all, then the filter is going to be cleared. Another pivot table we can come up with. I want to put a pivot table here, or I can show you how to design your pivot table. Come here to design, then let's click on this. You can see the colors are changing, and you have so many designs here. You can select what makes you comfortable. So I can go with that. You can see it's looking so nice. So I'm going to create another pivot table. I just come insert. I click on pivot table. Once I'm here, I'll go back to my row sheet. This is what's supposed to have the data. I'll click anywhere in my data, don't press Control plus A. My table is highlighted. The new worksheet I'm going to say, or I can say the existing worksheet, unless you want it to be, depends with where you want it to be. Okay, so I'll say the existing worksheet and I'm going to place it here under the pivot table. I'll just click here. So I'll say okay, and it's going to form. You can see pivot table 2. I can come here and rename maybe and say, let me call it 112 for the sake of now. So here I want us to get the pivot table for manager. So manager and let's say quantity or price. So manager is going to go to the rows, and I'm going to have the manager, the price. Okay, price. Let's put price. Okay, I can change the design. I come here, pick this one. Try to be unique. Then I'll put a filter. So you see when you click outside, this part disappears, but when you click anywhere in your pivot table, it comes. So I want to show you something. Let's put purchase type as the filter. So here you can say we want to get only the purchase type for online. You can see the values are reducing, so it's working. Drive through. You can see the values are reducing. So I'll just say all and say okay. Then follows the next thing. We can add the price and the filter for price and what. So I'll come here, insert, then I'll say a pivot table. I'll go to my row sheet, I'll delete everything here. Then I'll go anywhere in my data. Control A. Existing worksheet should be here. Okay, I want it here. So let me say I want it here, somewhere like here. Just a short period, say okay. So pivot table 3, I can call it 113. Enter. Then the next thing here, I want to show the payment type, going to be on the rows and the price. So you can see which one is doing better. The one that's doing better is Insta Online. That is having a lot of range from the remaining two. Okay, so I can also change the design, put something like that. Now, a question: how does the filter work? When you want to add a filter to your pivot table, you can come here. So this one I can also give it a filter of city maybe. for uniformity. Okay, it's looking good now. So I want us to do what, to add something like a slicer. I get to understand how it works. So I'll come here under this pivot chart analyze. I'll insert a slicer. Then I can select, let me say I want a slicer for city under the purchase type. Okay. So two slices are going to form. You have to place them depending on where I want you to be. So this I can change. You can edit the slicer. This is the current color. Maybe let me use this. Then for this one, this is the current color. I can decide to use this. You can see. So here, if you want to fit appropriately, it means that they are supposed to be checked soil. Okay, so here we have one column, but I'm going to increase. When you go under the slicer tab 1, I'm going to increase it to 5. Enter. Then I'll reduce this, and then I'll increase this. Okay. This one I can put it here. This one is having 3. I can maintain it here with me. Okay, so I want to show you how it works. So you can see if you click anywhere, let's say you want to get the information about Berlin. You can see the values are changing here, meaning we don't have what has lost online. We don't have online services in Berlin. So you can see it's also going here. When you click on Madrid, no one will boycott. Okay, so you can see if you click here, maybe Lisbon, the values are going to be changing. So one thing about this pivot table, if you change your values, from the data, they're not going to reflect in your table. So you're supposed to do what? You're supposed to come here. Okay, here. Just a minute. So you're going to use the refresh button. Okay, anytime you make changes in your data, they're not going to reflect here. So what you're supposed to do, you're supposed to make refresh every time if any changes occur in your data set, and everything is going to be okay. Another thing I want to show you, apart from creating the pivot table and understanding the user, I also want to show you the charts. So when you click this, when you come to pivot table analyze, we have pivot chart. When you just click on this, then it's going to recommend a chart for you. Just say okay and use what has been recommended for you. Then can reduce this, but that's not making sense. Okay. You can create another one from this pivot chart. Then this time I want to use this. I just say okay. I can reduce this one. So you can add as many visuals as possible. Remember, when you add a visual, you are adding another one called the format. So when you come here, you can always go and change very many things. Okay. When you come to design, you can add chart elements like title, labels, legend, and all that. Then you also have the chart size. You can change and get to use what makes you happy, like maybe that one. What makes you happy? Okay. So after doing this, now you have the charts, you have the pivot table that have been created. You understand how to create pivot table, okay? You can now design as many pivot tables as possible, create bar charts, create pie charts, and everything you wish to create. So, and I think that's a full run through of pivot table and charts in Excel. And with just a few clicks, you can turn any data set into a clean, interactive dashboard. And I also want to encourage you that don't forget, this is a must-know skill for anyone working with data. Thank you for watching.